Good evening. I trust you've had a fruitful day. I do not say happy, though I hope it has been a happy day. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Buddha, the blessed, noble, and fully self-awakened one. No doubt you've noticed the change in decor there. The gold curtain, that is gold, I think, yes. When the sun shines through it, it is quite remarkable. So we're moving on to the Great Sixfold Base, the discourse on the Great Sixfold Base. So this is just an opportunity to revise everything. Just like in any system, everything is interconnected and related to everything else. So wherever you start in the Buddha's teachings, you eventually can include everything because it links from one to the next. And this is what this discourse does for us. So it's also a bit of a revision, going through all these different lists. So we'll see what he says. So on one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi again. That's one of his favorite places up in the North Park there, at Anathapindika's Park. And he says to the people listening, I shall teach you a discourse on the Great Sixfold Base. Listen and attend closely to what I say. Say, yes, Venerable Sir. When one does not know and see the I as it actually is, when one does not know and see forms as they actually are, when one does not know and see I consciousness as it actually is, when one does not know and see as it actually is the feeling felt as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, neutral that arises with eye contact as a condition, then one is inflamed by indulgence for the eye, for forms, for eye consciousness, for eye contact, for feelings felt as pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral that arise with eye contact as condition. So these are your middle links, aren't they, of dependent origination, right? The active part begins at the point of contact. So the contact, remember, has to have these three ingredients. It has to have a base, a sense base, and remember there's the mind as a sense base too, the mind-heart as a sense base too for emotions and thoughts, our inner life. But for the outer life out there, there is that sense base of the eye, the retina, the object that we're looking at, and there has to be this consciousness. If any of those are missing, then you basically don't see. And it's dependent on that we experience whether something is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So the first information that comes in doesn't have that definition. It's just information, you might say. It's just a color or shape. It's then it's the next part, which is connected with perception and concept, right? So that when you look at a tree, the first impressions, remember, are just the color and the shape of the tree. That's all that the space gives you. But then, as it brought into the mind, it's given a certain feeling tone, pleasantness, happiness, and a certain understanding, tree. And then, of course, there's that reaction of wanting it, wanting more tree, wanting to hug a tree, for heaven's sake. Now, when one abides inflamed by overindulgence, compulsive indulgence, fettered, infatuated, contemplating gratification, then the five aggregates affected by clinging are built up for oneself and in the future. So these five aggregates, remember, the body, feeling, perceptions, concepts, all our habits, everything that we create through an act of will and consciousness. And They are conditioned and conditioning. So remember that. It's important to grasp. Every time you condition yourself towards in something, it also has the effect of conditioning the future. Which basically means the more biscuits you have, the more biscuits you want. And this brings about the renewal of the desire to become, right? This is the selfing process that carries on from it, and is accompanied by delight and this indulgence, and delights in this and that increases. Now, one's bodily mental troubles increase. One's physical and mental torments increase. One's physical and mental fevers increase. And one experiences physical and mental suffering. Okay? So all indulgence is bad for us one way or the other. And it's really recognizing that makes us change our behavior. So he's been through the eye contact. So now, of course, he goes through the rest of the 5 senses and the 6th sense, which is the mind. Now, the opposite is true, of course, and you end up with one's bodily and mental troubles are abandoned, one's bodily and mental torments are abandoned, one's physical and mental fevers are abandoned, and one experiences physical and mental pleasure. Now, you've got to be careful here. Of course, indulgence in pleasant things also gives you physical and mental pleasure, but eventually they lead you to suffering. This, when we don't indulge in something and we just enjoy it, then it doesn't lead to this further suffering. To kiss a joy as it flies, to live in eternity's sunrise. Blake. So now he tells us about the view. So it comes from a person's understanding. If we don't understand something properly or clearly, then of course we make these mistakes. Now, the view of a person such as this is right view. His intention is right view. His effort is right view. His mindfulness is right mindfulness. Sorry, I'll read that again. His intention is right intention. His effort is right effort. His mindfulness is right mindfulness. His concentration, right concentration. In other words, here we have the eightfold path. So it's right view, right intention, number 1 and number 2, and the last 3, which are to do with our mindfulness, not just in meditation, but in daily life. Right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Okay? And this later on expresses itself in the way we speak, the act, and what we do. This noble eightfold path finds fulfillment in him by development. So remember, he's warned us in another discourse that this stuff is gradual. We can't expect quick results. Very disappointing. Now, when he develops the noble eightfold path, the 4 foundations of mindfulness also come to fulfillment by development. So here we're talking about the Arahat, really, so we've completed the path. But it shows us the path that actually, which way we have to go. The 4 kinds of striving are also come also to fulfillment in him by development. The 4 bases of spiritual power also come to him by development. The 5 faculties also come to fulfillment in him by development. And the 7 factors of enlightenment come to fulfillment in him by development. And these here, of course, now he's led us into the eightfold path. He's led it into the 37 requisites for enlightenment. I don't think it includes the Noble Eightfold Path. Oh, yes, of course it does. So you've got the 8 of the Noble Eightfold Path, the 4 foundations of mindfulness on the body, on feelings, on the mind, and on the Buddha's teachings, which, of course, include the hindrances and the 7 factors of enlightenment. The 4 kinds of striving, remember, to abandon what is unwholesome and to stop unwholesomeness coming up, to increase what is coming up and increase wholesome states that are coming up, and and stop them from disappearing and keep developing them. The 4 kinds of striving, the 4 bases of power, that was, remember, a real zeal for something, a real energy for it, a real heart commitment to it, and this constant investigation, this constant ability to constant reflection and investigative reflection. These are the 4 roads to power, or success. I prefer the translation success. And remember that these also can be used in ordinary daily life for any task you do, even if you're, just cutting the lawn, for instance, a real zeal for it, that sort of commitment to it, a heart's commitment, and being constantly aware of what one's doing and making sure that one is cutting the lawn in the best way possible. Then, of course, there are the 5 spiritual faculties. So here we've got that the awareness, effort, concentration. I've got them in the wrong order here, I think. Yeah, sorry, faith, effort, awareness, concentration, and wisdom. Now that panya has both the meaning of a wisdom, what you actually understand through your practice, and the active insight process, panya. And they become the 5 powers also. So remember that when one has made the first path and fruit, these are called powers because they become established in the person, especially the faith, the confidence. So before we've had the experience of Nibbana or seen deeply into these 3 characteristics of existence, there's always that sense of, should we say, possible doubt. But once you've seen it for yourself, how can you possibly doubt it? Hence, your confidence is rooted. It's powerful. It's a power. And of course, the 7 factors of enlightenment. So remember those pairs. Awareness balances everything, but then you have the effort with the concentration. Too much effort, you get restless. Too much concentration, you fall asleep. And then there's that sense of calmness with the investigation. If you become excited about investigating something or coming from a wrong position, then of course it corrupts it. And if you investigate without that calmness, then there's usually restlessness there or dullness. And then finally, yes, equanimity with that process of investigation. Right? Sorry, I should have said interest. The calmness with the interest. And then there's the equanimity, not coming from a position, a view, so that you're always looking for what you think you know, but completely coming from a place of not knowing, not committing yourself to anything, just looking, just clear seeing, and that process of investigation. Those are 7 factors come to fulfillment in him by development. Now, these 2 things, concentration and insight, occur in him yoked evenly together. This is the full liberation. And he fully understands by direct experience those things that should be fully understood by direct experience. He abandons by direct experience those things, he abandons by direct knowledge those things that should be abandoned when you know something. And he develops by direct, because of his direct experience, those things that should be developed. And he realizes those direct, by his personal experience, those things that should be realized. Those things belong to the 4 noble truths, right? So you understand suffering, you understand the cause of suffering, and you understand and you realize how to get rid of it. Yeah. Now, what things should be fully understood by direct experience? The answer is this: the 5 aggregates. Okay, the 5 aggregates affected by clinging. So that's the material form, the feeling aggregate, the perception and conception aggregate, all the formations, all the habits that we have, cause by our own will, and finally consciousness. And what should be abandoned by this direct knowledge, this direct experience? Ignorance and craving for becoming, right? So the ignorance which creates that initial delusion of the self, and it's the self that wants to keep recreating itself, recommitting itself from one moment to the next. And then finally, what things should be realized by direct knowledge? It should be the way things really are: anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanence, the cause of suffering, not self, and final deliverance. Now, when this is what the Blessed One said, and the bhikkhus were delighted, and more often than not, delighted in the Blessed One's words. So this discourse is it's like a sort of revision for us. So it's called the Great Sixfold Base, number 149. So I hope that's made you confident that you know the Dharma very well, and that all you need to do is to keep developing it, and before long, without any doubt, you will be fully liberated. And I do hope sooner rather than later. So we can do a bit of practice.